But I think people love to make those statements. People love to be like, oh, rock is dead, rock is back, and punk is gone, and now it's electro is in, and we don't really pay attention. We don't give a shit about that. We really try to ignore that as much as possible, I'd say, and just whatever we like is what's going on in our world, basically. And whether or not that fits in, or it's dead, or it's old, or it's somebody else's idea completely, just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Traditionally in music and Pete Seeger, folk singers, Bob Dylan, even the early rock and roll bands, Byrds, and the Hollies, and the ideas were a little more free. There wasn't such a concept of ownership of ideas and songs and music, and it was a very free exchange where, oh yeah, I'll play, I'm gonna go on stage and play a couple Dylan songs tonight and Woody Guthrie songs tonight, and or I'm gonna take an old blues song and change the words, and that's gonna be one of my songs. And it wasn't seen as theft because these weren't things you could own. They weren't things that were yours. They were kind of just the world, they were the universes, and you just take them and do whatever. And I think that's kind of the tradition we're trying to be a part of. And,
I think it's also like today, it is sort of a different stigma or a different connotation on borrowing music, because I think it's more celebrated back then. Now it's a little more divisive, So it is called being stolen.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading that Dylan book. He's talking about his first 5 years of existence. He's like, oh yeah, I used this blues song and I just changed the words and I did this and that. And it wasn't stealing. It was just recontextualizing and like.
It's also learning too. I mean, you can't start from zero and have a record. You have to go through a period of listening to other things, patching things together. This looks cool, use that, and then.
I think there is part of that where it's like, like we're using that, and we've done that before, and I think that's something just, I don't know, not like a fuck you or anything, but just kind of like, we're taking that, and we're naming our band
the
Man.
one.
Yeah. And I don't care how stupid that is, we're doing it, and, But I think but I think it's aside from that gut reaction, it's more of just kind of. Leave Home, I think, in the context of our record, has a much different meaning than it does when it's the title of the Ramones record, but at the same time, you can't separate that it was the Ramones record, and we're very much embracing that also. Making it your own while still acknowledging where it came from, which I think is what all Pete Seeger and Dylan and all those guys were doing in the first place anyway, so it's just part of that.
You gotta leave home at a certain point, too. I mean, even that, I kind of like that, telling people, or not necessarily advertising, but you gotta, go out there and try things out, leave the womb, Then you'll want to go back. So.
Then you want to go back,
and then you're coming back around. Wisconsin originally, but I live in New York now. It was a pretty normal country type, small town. Led Zeppelin, on the radio. And it was cool. I like it. I'm glad I came from sort of a rural area because it made me want to go towards New York, you know.
Yeah, it's a much different perspective than the suburbs from when we talk about that sort of stuff. You know, like I grew up, like, you know, half an hour out of Manhattan or whatever. So like, you know, I was going into the city as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid and going to punk shows and kind of involved in that scene. And you know, there's a lot of people, more people like kind of grew up with and everything. A lot of their parents, as well as my parents, grew up in the city and then moved out. And so there's just kind of this weird community of, you know, these city folks out in the burbs, and you know, there's a big like punk scene and stuff that kind of came up from that. And I think revolutions come out of places where you don't see them anyway. You know, I don't think Fugazi and those guys were trying to start a revolution. I think they were just doing their thing, which turned into a revolution because their thing happened to be something pretty unique and valuable to a lot of people. And I mean, I think, you know, the problem comes when you try to start a revolution. And you try to start a revolution, you're doomed to fail. But when you just are true to yourself, sometimes, you know, things tend to work out well, and people pick up on that. And they, you know, that's I think that's what everybody's really looking for, is to find some sort of inner peace with themselves. And you do that by just doing your thing, and that sometimes turns into a really, you know, amazing thing that translates to a lot of people. Trying to present like a naked vision of who we are as people, I guess. That's really all there is to it. There's not a big grand scheme or some. We're just trying to play. We're just trying to show who we are and express ourselves a little bit. And however that comes out, it comes out.
A naked version of what you are.
Yeah, without like a pretense of kind of, oh, we're this kind of a band, or we're this or that. It's, you know, I'm Mark and he's Nick, and these are our thoughts and feelings on the world, and that's it. That's all we got for you guys. You know, just here it is.